Before we get into today's show, I want to tell you about a new offering from MD Coaches. Group coaching for physicians is a small, virtual, confidential cohort designed to inspire participants to rediscover personal and professional fulfillment. The next cohort begins on Thursday, October 6th, and runs weekly until November 10th. And you can earn 1 CME credit per session, totaling 6 credits in all. To learn more and to register, visit www.mdcoaches.store. Space is limited, so be sure and register today.
I found my dad waiting in the front of the door, and he said, "Omar, you have to leave the country immediately. Your name came as somebody who needs to be, arrested and thrown in jail because of my humanitarian activities, taking care of widows and orphans."
Paging Dr. Cook. Paging Dr. Cook. Dr. Cook, you're wanted in the OR. Dr. Cook, you're wanted in the OR.
Welcome to the Prescription for Success podcast with your host, Dr. Randy Cook.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Prescription for Success. I'm Dr. Randy Cook, your host for the podcast, which is a production of MD Coaches, providing leadership and executive coaching for physicians by physicians to overcome burnout, transition your career, develop as a leader, or whatever your goal might be. Visit MD Coaches on the web at mymdcoaches.com because you're not in this alone. And don't forget, CME credit is available when you listen with us. Just look for CMify in the show notes to learn how. My guest today is a Libyan-born psychiatrist who has lived through the trauma of civil war and dislocation from his homeland and family. Today, he's a Harvard-trained expert in psychological trauma. I'm glad you could join me today for this very compelling story from Dr. Omar Reda. And I'm honored today to be speaking with Dr. Omar Reda out in the Portland, Oregon area. Am I right about that, Omar?
Yes.
And first of all, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us, and welcome to Prescription for Success.
Thank you, Randy. It's my pleasure.
This is really a compelling story that you have, Omar, and I just can't wait to get into it. But as we always do, I want to begin with your early life and talk about how you got interested in medicine. I know that you grew up in Libya, and I'm curious to know about what age you became interested in a life in medicine.
Yeah, thank you. So it was very early, actually. At age 6, I lost my sister. She was only 14. So she became blind, and we didn't know what was going on with her. And then she quickly lost her life, and it was brain cancer, medulloblastoma. So at that very early age, I thought I'm going to become a brain surgeon. That's what ignited my passion about, medicine in general. And I can tell my story about neurosurgery later on.
Okay, yeah, we'll get around to that. And so you didn't really have any medical types around you in the family or close acquaintances or anything like that. It was just this experience with your own sister. Is that correct?
Yeah, I have an uncle, my mom's brother. He's a gynecologist. And then my sister, who was also very young at the age, she was about, 12 when we lost our 14-year-old sister. She's now a dermatologist as well.
Well, so let's talk about the development of your career, and I want to make sure that I properly juxtapose those events in your life with the political activities that were going on in Libya at the time, because I know that had a big impact on every decision that you made. But tell me about getting into medical school and what those early years were like.
Yeah, I mean, I worked very hard, in medical school just to make sure that I get into neurosurgery, because when I saw mom and dad devastated by the loss of my sister, I was determined to, make sure that no other family will go through what my family went through. So
Mm-hmm.
I did extremely well in my internship, and I actually went through different rotations and found out, the hard way that surgery was not my cup of tea. Every time I go to the operating room, I end up on the floor unconscious. So
Oh
after,
dear, that is a little bit of a hindrance.
yeah, they told me, Omar, you cannot be a neurosurgeon if you are always fainting. So I passed my general surgery rotation, but I was never able to go into neurosurgery. So I became an emergency room physician instead.
Well, now, if I have to ask you if you were disturbed by the sight of blood in the operating room, did you fare any better in the emergency room? You must have.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what was going on with the, fainting episodes, because when the war happened in Libya in 2011, I was seeing dead bodies, and I have seen, explosions. I have seen many other gruesome things, and did not affect me. So I don't know if it's the survivor mode that we go through when we go through an armed conflict, but yeah, only it happens in the OR.
You know, I have heard it said from medical students and even sometimes house staff that just the atmosphere that exists in an operating room where there is a fearsome professor of surgery about to do an operation can create a good bit of anxiety on its own. Do you think that had anything to do with it? Just the sort of operating room atmosphere and the tension that was there and that sort of thing, more so than the blood and seeing the inside of a human body. What do you think?
Yeah, I believe anxiety is a significant factor here, because the same thing happened when my wife went into cesarean section. So the first
Mm-hmm.
time I came face to face or eye to eye with my child coming out of the womb, I
Yeah.
immediately was on the floor.
So it's got more to do with the circumstances than the sight of blood, I guess.
Hmm.
So go ahead and tell me about what came next. You finished your medical school training in Libya, and I am unclear about whether you went ahead and started your psychiatric training there, or did that happen later in this country?
Thank you. So in Libya, you go into medical school immediately after high school. You don't go
Mm-hmm.
to community college or anything like that. So I
Mm-hmm.
started medical school at age 17 and finished around age 24. So it's 7 years you go through internship first, then year 1 to 5, then you go into another year of rotating through different specialities in order to pick the one that you like the most.
Mm-hmm.
And so I finished that in 1996, and the most need was in emergency room medicine. So I did that
Uh-huh.
for about 2.5 years, and then one day I came from the hospital and found my dad waiting in the front of the door, and he said, "Omar, you have to leave the country immediately. Your name came as somebody who needs to be, arrested and thrown in jail because of my humanitarian activities, taking care of widows and orphans." So I found myself crossing the Mediterranean Sea,
Wow.
boarding a boat, and ending up in the United Kingdom, living as an asylum seeker. I was never a refugee. That status was never granted to me. And then when I came to the United States, I joined the University of Tennessee in Memphis and chose
Mm-hmm.
psychiatry.
And just a little bit more about that story, if you will. Was that at about the time of, or where temporarily was that event with respect to 2011 and the downfall of Gaddafi and those types of things that led to the unrest? Was this at about the same time or before or after? Where were you?
And no, I left Libya in 1999. So I lived 12 years in exile before
Oh, I
returning to Libya.
see. So this was when Gaddafi was still in power.
That's correct, yeah.
Wow. So you continued with your residency training in Tennessee, right?
Hmm.
And that was in psychiatry. And subsequently, you got a fellowship at Harvard in the refugee trauma program. Am I correct about that?
So this is how it happened. Like I did my residency between 2005 2009, Actually, in 2006, as a second-year psychiatry resident, I received this random email from, Harvard program in refugee trauma. And, this is an email that usually goes to your spam folder and you tend to ignore it. But something told
Right.
me in my heart I have to open that email. And I'm very glad that I did, because they were recruiting for somebody from a Muslim and Arab background to join the program for free and learn how to take care of refugees. So that was in 2006. I finished the program 2007, never expecting that I'm going to apply the same tools and skills with my home country in the year 2011.
That's very remarkable.
Mhm.
Quite a serendipitously event. So you weren't seeking this out at all. It was just a random email that you clicked on, or something came in the mail, and there it was. Is that about the way it came about?
Yeah, I mean, I was always interested in trauma psychiatry. So I was, working with the
Yeah.
disaster psychiatry, section. I was volunteering.
What do you think it was about psychiatric trauma that had a hold on you?
Yeah, I mean, it's not only my sister dying and when I was 6 years old. I also, when I was 11, I was walking home from school when somebody was about to kidnap me. So somebody stopped his car and he pretended to ask for directions. And I went to, help him out, and found out, that he was naked and he wanted to, sexually assault me. And I
Oh
was
my
very lucky
goodness.
to run away from that encounter. But that ignited my passion about, sexual trauma and how to make sure children are safe.
That's an interesting reaction.
Hmm.
I suspect very few people who have that experience decide, maybe I can do something to really help this. So kudos for you for taking that approach.
Thank you, Ryan.
We'll get back to our interview in just a moment, but right now, I want to tell you about a new sponsor for us. Growing Innovation Health Solutions is a comprehensive medical billing service that allows you to shift the burden of collections off your shoulders so you can focus on patient care. GI Health Solutions has the experience and the expertise to help you manage all your billing-related chores efficiently and professionally. Their expert team will handle all your coding, claim follow-up, and billing issues to be certain you receive your payments on time. They can streamline your billing process and increase your revenue by up to 30%. With GI Health Solutions, you'll get more time with patients, less busy work, better cash flow, fewer errors, and improved patient satisfaction. So reach out to Growing Innovation Health Solutions today and let them help your medical group improve profitability and eliminate administrative burdens. Visit their website at www.gihealthsolutions.net for a free consultation.
Hi, I'm Rhonda Crow, founder and CEO for MD Coaches. Here on RX for Success, we interview a lot of great medical professionals on how they grew their careers, how they overcame challenges, and how they handle day-to-day work. I really hope you're getting a lot of great information. But if you're looking for an answer to a specific problem, management or administration challenge, or if you're feeling just a bit burnt out, like maybe you chose the wrong career, well, then there's a faster way to get the help you need. No, it's not counseling, it's coaching. RX for Success is produced by MD Coaches, a team of physicians who have been where you are. I know you're used to going it alone, but you don't have to. Get the support you need today. Visit us at mymdcoaches.com to schedule your complimentary consultation. Again, that's mymdcoaches.com, because you're not in this alone.
We'll get back to our interview in just a moment, but right now I want to tell you a little bit about Physician Outlook. If you haven't discovered this remarkable magazine, please do so very soon. It was created by physicians, for physicians, to showcase the intersection between clinical and non-clinical interests. Whether it's writing, painting, cooking, politics, and dozens of other topics, Physician Outlook gives a physician perspective. It's available online and in print. It's really unique among physician lifestyle magazines. And like the Prescription for Success podcast, Physician Outlook amplifies the voice of any physician who has something to say. It also engages patients who still believe in physician-led, team-based care. And Prescription for Success listeners can get 3 months free when you enter our promo code RX for Success and select the monthly option at checkout. That's a really great deal on this stunning publication. And now let's get back to today's interview. So when you finished up at Harvard, you made a really big move to the other side of the United States. You want to tell us about that decision and where you went?
Yeah, the good news, I finished my Harvard program in refugee trauma, which is affiliated with Harvard, online. So it is 2 weeks in Italy. You go face to face and meet with your peers from all over the world. But then you finish the program virtually. So I was lucky actually to finish the program during my PGY2 training in psychiatry and from the comfort of my home in Memphis.
But then your relocation to I may have this wrong, but I think it was at first California and then later to Oregon. Can you tell us about that?
So when I was about to graduate from the University of Tennessee in Memphis, I asked my wife, okay, what's the next move? Should we stay in Tennessee? And she wanted so bad to move to the Northwest. So she told me our options are either Seattle or Portland. So I applied for the university here in Portland, and I got matched with Oregon Health Sciences University. So I made immediate move from Tennessee to Oregon.
I gather your wife felt like you couldn't have had better luck. How did you feel about your relocation to Oregon?
Yeah, I mean, I really liked Tennessee, but there's something special about the Northwest. So we really are in love with Portland, and in 2 weeks we actually are moving away from the state of Oregon back to the state of Colorado to take care of my in-laws. They're getting older.
Wow.
And they're getting sick. Yeah, I mean, we lived in Colorado between 2002 2005, and we're going back.
Well, I was going to say, I bet that you're going to find Colorado equally as engaging. And this position in Oregon, was it strictly private practice, or was there an academic appointment associated with us? Tell us about that.
So I started in 2009 as an assistant professor through the Oregon Health and Sciences University. And I was working 4 days at the state hospital in a forensic unit. And then one day I was working in the university teaching and supervising residents. And that went on from 2009 until 2013. But because I was frequently flying back and forth to Libya and Syria and other refugee camps, I was unable to continue my work with the university. I actually took 1 year off and went to Libya, and I built programs there. Then when I came back to Oregon in 2014, I joined a private Catholic hospital, the Providence Health System.
So I want to know a little bit more. Well, I want to know a lot more about those trips that you referred to when you went back to Libya. This was at or about 2011, the fall of Gaddafi, and I guess the circumstances of civil war there are continuing even to this day. So you made a number of trips, as I understand it, and please correct me if I'm wrong, back to your native country to try to help in any way you could. You want to tell us about that?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, the first trip was the first week of the civil war. So the Arab Spring, that started in Tunisia, then Egypt, then Libya, then Syria, and eventually Yemen. If you remember, it started peacefully and very quickly turned into a violent, exchange, unfortunately. And as you have very eloquently said, unfortunately, the war continues in Libya, and maybe the revolution has failed. The country is falling into a civil war and maybe even complete division into East and West and South. Most likely that's what's going to happen in Libya, unfortunately. But, in the first week of the revolution, Gaddafi shut down any technology, so you cannot reach your family through social media, even through cell phones. So I was very, very scared about the safety of my parents and my siblings. So one day I was able to connect with my mom, and Gaddafi had promised to, wipe out the city of Benghazi, my home city. That means 750,000 people gonna die, including all
Wow.
of my family members. So my mom said, "Yeah, I confirmed the news, and I just wanted you to know that how proud I am of you, and I'm gonna see you in heaven." And this is something that caused my PTSD, and I immediately asked forgiveness from my wife. But I said, I'm taking the first plane to be with my parents, and so that was in February of 2011. And I have done 7 trips since that time. The last one was in 2016.
Well, I would really like to know a lot more about those 7 trips. Obviously, we don't have time to go through every one of them in detail, but if you previously had to leave the country under threat of death, I have to imagine that in this new circumstance with a raging civil war, it must have been at least equally and probably more dangerous for you during that time. So can you just talk about that? Give us some details about what that was like.
It was very, very interesting because both Libya and Egypt were going through the same at the same time. So the border between the two countries was extremely open, and that has advantages for some people like me who, can enter their home country after all these years. At the same time, there are disadvantages because anybody can cross the border, including, unfortunately, extremist groups and people who might be mercenaries and so on. So it was extremely dangerous. I agree with you. So the first trip, my main mission was to make sure my family is okay and do some psychosocial education because psychiatry and mental health is not something that well celebrated there. There's lots of stigma and taboo. So I just made sure that people know it's not only the visible wounds that we need to pay attention to. It's mainly the invisible wounds that will lead to prolonged suffering. And this is what we see the aftermath of the civil war is mainly psychosocial implications.
Do you think you attracted potentially dangerous attention to yourself during all that?
It was mixed. I mean, there was lots of positive response to that message. At the same time, of course, once you come in the radio and the TV and you bring messages of hope and unity, you become a target. So, I really wanted to make sure that, I don't lose my life and don't cost my children, my wife, their loved one in the process of taking care of others. That's why I always focus on healing the healer and taking care of ourselves as providers of care. But the first mission, it was mainly basic. I mean, I was very lucky to contact one organization here by the name of Medical Teams International. They are here in Portland, Oregon. And I said, what can you help me with? And they said they can send medical equipment. So they sent about $500,000 worth of equipment with me that I took
Wow.
to hospitals in the front lines of the fighting.
That's really a remarkable story. So let's return the conversation to this country. Clearly, your experiences in your home country had an incredible impact on you, and how could it not? From what I can read about you, it sounds to me that you have brought quite a bit of knowledge with you about psychological trauma back to your practice in this country, what you do in the Portland area. Am I correct about that?
Yeah, I mean, that's my area of passion and expertise. So people view me as an expert on trauma, including
Yeah.
refugee trauma. And that comes from both, personal experience, as you can imagine, but also professional interest.
So tell us about some of the things that you see that are responsible for psychological trauma quite a long way from any battlefield or a war zone, but yet it's going on in a major city in the United States. Where does that sort of psychological trauma come from?
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I have noticed like the trauma story can cause lots of dysfunction, not only on individual level, but also affecting families and communities. And that's why in 2011, I created something called Project Untangled, because many people, individually or through their family or community, they are tangled in a web of trauma that can go from one generation to another if we don't really talk about our feelings and nurse our wounds and really have a voice to tell our story. So that was my mission since 2011. But really, what I see is one is the stigma, which is very common even here in the United States, that many people discriminate against their mental health. If you are bleeding
Yeah.
emotionally, people will tell you to suck it up and don't talk about it, and you're going to be a burden. If you are bleeding physically, people will just rush you to the emergency room and take care of you. So the stigma has been something that we need to fight, not only as psychiatrists, but really as a community and as a society. And the second thing is, I have noticed that the impact of trauma on family unit. Many families, because of their trauma story, they see each other as enemies, and their trauma story will break their family unit. So that's why Untangled focuses heavily on healing in a family context, and then using all of the community resources, because there are transgenerational trauma that maybe we can lean on our communities and our systems, maybe our places of worship, our schools. We empower every system around the individual in order to make sure that the individual heals and eventually the family and the society heals that way.
Do you think the possibility of ethnic discrimination or ethnic fear is something that feeds that sort of psychological trauma
Yeah, I mean,
in this country?
absolutely. I mean, we know racism is very well known, but mainly neglected big elephant in the room. So that's why
Mm-hmm.
I very, openly talk about my experiences with racism and Islamophobia, and, people hating me for my skin color or my accent or the way I decide to practice my religion. And I really don't respond to hate through hate or violence. I rather try to understand where the other person is coming from, try to educate and make a connection, build a bridge. And that's why you will see that I wrote chapters in the book, psychiatry and Islamophobia, and psychiatry and anti-Semitism, because these are very personal things that I need to speak up on behalf of people who go through these hateful experiences. And many times they don't really feel safe to speak up.
And how do you help people find the courage to do that? I think you're absolutely correct about that. But how do you respond to people who present you with an unquestionably ethnically prejudiced state of mind? How do you find a way to open a channel of communication?
The first thing I will see that most likely this is not about me. This is a person who is showing their fear through
Mm,
anger or through
a lot of wisdom
hostility.
there.
Yeah, and I really, this happened even this morning. So, about 2 days ago, one of my patients was assigned to me a new admission. And I went to her room and I wanted to introduce myself. And she had a big reaction. She said, I don't work with people of color. I only work with white American physicians. And I
Wow.
showed lots of compassion. And I said, Absolutely, let me talk to my supervisor, who happened to be the only white American, in the group. And he very generously and kindly agreed to take the patient. And then, today is her discharge date. And she actually, before she left the hospital, she said, Can I talk to Dr. Reda? And I want to apologize. And just we had a nice conversation that it was not about me. Just something triggered her fear. And that happened before in one of my patients that I actually wrote in my newest book, The Wounded Healer. So she asked me, she said, So your name is Rita, not Rita? She said, What kind of name is that? Where are you from? And I said, I'm from North Africa originally. And she said, That whole continent should just drown because you people are nothing but thugs and criminals. And so I said, Wow, you have big reaction to people of color. What happened? So I showed compassion and curiosity, and she started crying. She said her father was killed by someone who happened to be a person of color, and she was showing her trauma story through hostility. And when I created the space in my heart for her suffering, we ended up having a nice conversation, and I continue to be her psychiatrist.
Wow. That's a great story. I really love hearing that. Tell us a little bit more about your latest book. You have several of them, but I'd like to know a little bit more about The Wounded Healer. Can you tell us, give us a little thumbnail sketch about what to expect in that one?
Yeah, so the two models that I created that I'm very proud of, and one is called Untangled, as I said, and I can very, very briefly tell you that Untangled is made of 5 different components. The first one is psychosocial education in order to fight stigma. The second one is training of trainers. The third one is creating safe spaces so people can have these very difficult but honest conversations. And the fourth one is creating, culturally sensitive and humble resources for the community. And the last one, if needed, we build clinical services, crisis intervention team. So out of Untangled, which is the big umbrella that I operate under, is The Wounded Healer, which is my latest book that was released only on March 15 of 2022. So during the pandemic, I noticed the same amount of dysfunction is happening with the caregivers. So many of my colleagues, nurses, doctors, they either left the field of medicine because they are completely burnt out. Some of them struggling with substance use to numb their moral injury. And unfortunately, we lost some of them to suicide. I can no longer bear false witness to their suffering, and I wanted to become their voice, so I wrote The Wounded Healer.
Well, I can't think of a more stunning or appropriate memoriam than that. And thank you so much for making that available to all of us. It's quite a credit to your character.
Thank you. I mean, it's my privilege to bear witness to these stories.
Well, Omar, I have really enjoyed our conversation today, and I thank you so much for being with us. We have arrived at the part of the program that I really like the most, and that's when I stop talking. I'm going to give the stage entirely to you, and I will close my mic for a few minutes while Dr. Omar Reda gives us his personal prescriptions for success.
Thank you, Randy. So that's a wonderful, question. How do you prescribe success? In my case, as a quote unquote trauma expert, I would say I would be extremely successful if I lose my job, if there is no more trauma in the world, if my services are no longer needed, if we can be brave enough to actually speak loudly and speak up and bring people out of their, secret hiding spots and from their silent suffering, a culture of toxic stress that's prevalent in the healthcare industry. If I have it my way, my prescription for success will be to actually implement the untangled model so nobody continues to be tangled. We were born unshackled, and I think everybody deserves to be free from the invisible wounds of trauma. So I like to expand on the psychosocial education so these conversations become normal, and the caregivers, we humanize their suffering. Yes, we take care of others, but we don't forget our own needs and don't forget our loved ones. We don't lose the American dream chasing it. I don't only focus materialistically on my loved ones, but also remember that they also have social and psychological and emotional needs. I invite people to focus on their biological needs, taking care of their body, their psychological needs, taking care of their mind, their social needs, taking care of their body, their heart, and also their spiritual needs, taking care of their soul. So that will be my prescription for success, and I hope one day I will live in a world that's free from violence, free from trauma, and if I cannot do that, at least I take small part in creating a better world for my children. Thank you, Rand.
Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us, Omar. That is really profound, and it's quite a blessing to have you with us to talk about these things that mean so much to you. and I'm really grateful for you taking the time. Before we go, I want to give you an opportunity to let our audience know where they can find you. So if you would like to share email addresses or websites or where to find your book, please.
Thank you very much, Randy, for creating this platform and giving me the space to share my story today. So all of my information are available online on my website. It's dromarreda.com, which is DROMARREDA.com. And also Untangled, the model is dissected in detail on the website projectuntangled.org. And my personal email is Dr. Omar A. Reda @gmail.com. That's DROMARAREDA@gmail.com.
Well, thank you again, Omar. I appreciate you sharing that with us. I would like to also mention that there are quite a few YouTube videos featuring you, and I would invite our audience to just go to YouTube and put Omar Reda in the search bar, and you'll find some really fascinating and deeply moving conversations in there. It has been a great pleasure talking with you today, and once again, thank you so much for being a guest on Prescription for Success.
Thank you, Randy. The pleasure is mine.
Thank you so much for joining us today. We'd really appreciate a review from you, and a 5-star rating helps give our podcast much more visibility, and that helps us reach more listeners. Exclusive content is available on our Patreon page, including membership-only material, like personal rapid-fire Q&A sessions with our guests. To be sure you never miss an episode, visit our website at rxforsuccesspodcast.com to subscribe. And while you're there, learn how to get CME credit from CMify just by listening. Special thanks also to Ryan Jones, who created and performs our theme music. And remember, be sure to fill your prescription for success with my next episode.